So thank you everybody for joining this session. Welcome. This is Palante Paths, Nonlinear Journeys into STEM. I think we will go ahead and get started. Hi, Amber. Hi, everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming to the session. I was just mentioning that I think earlier today, like an hour or two ago, there was a very similar session um, of that kind of covered like career pivots, and I was really intrigued. So I hope that this one is also useful for the people in this room. Just some logistical things. This is a half-hour session. I'm trying to make it a little bit interactive, so we're going to actually start off with some statistics that are almost multiple choice. And if you guys can write in the chat your answers, there's like a guide, and we can get started like that. The other thing I wanted to mention before sliding into the first slide is I added, or actually Amber helped me add a document in the document section as well. It's a worksheet that I created that hopefully is going to help people take what we talk about during this presentation and apply it in a very hands-on way. So this conversation is going to talk about all of our like nonlinear paths. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about mine. And then hopefully we're going to talk about like translating our skills, how to harness our different skill sets. And that document should help kind of like lay out a 1, 2, 3 of how you can do that moving forward as well after this. Yes. Okay, great. So I'm going to get started. Slide 1. What % of people working in STEM roles do not have a bachelor's degree? If you could just put it into the chat, I'd love to see people's responses. Do you think it's 25? Do the little hand clapping emoji if you think it's 35, 45 if it's the surprise face, and if you think it's over half, do the little happy face. So what % of people working in STEM roles do not currently have a bachelor's degree? I think this one's a really good one to start off with. I'm seeing, okay, some clapping. Surprise faces and the happy face. Okay, so you might be surprised to learn that over half, so if you put the smiley face, you would be correct. 52% of people currently working in STEM roles do not actually have a bachelor's degree. And at this time, also I didn't mention, but if you guys have any comments and you want to like join the conversation, please hop on, please unmute, or just write it in the chat. But this is a big stat that when I learned about it, it kind of got me thinking. Exactly. Over half of people working in STEM roles don't have a bachelor's degree. So what does that mean? It means that there really is not a linear way to get into these roles, right? And I think that that's a really good place to start, especially considering our nonlinear journeys. Because for a lot of us, myself, we are first generation. We're kind of just taking one step at a time and figuring it out as it goes. So there's a lot to consider, and we'll move into the next one. Again, put it in the chat, but Hispanic or Latino workers make up 18% of the overall United States workforce and X% of STEM workers. Do you think it's 2%? I'm seeing some thumbs up. 14%, 18%, or 30%? Okay. So we're 18% of the overall US workforce, and we are a lot of different spread there in the answers. 14% of STEM workers, which another really good statistic, might be surprising, might not be, but I think what the takeaway for me here, and these statistics really lay the groundwork for how nonlinear these paths really are, but how talented our community really is. If we're 18% of the whole workforce and we're 14% of STEM workers, obviously we want to work towards getting that number up. That's why we're in summits like Techqueria, but it's a good place to start, but we got to keep going. Now, I mentioned earlier the little poll in the chat. So at this moment, if people can please click on the little poll and just let me know which best describes you. I'm just curious for the folks in the room, which level describes you best? Are you someone who is transitioning into tech and STEM? Are you entry level? Are you mid? Senior, executive, student, which one best describes you? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the poll should show results immediately as soon as people start filling them in. If so, we'll see the poll results soon. I will kind of tap on. The reason I'm asking is because I also kind of want to get the experience from people in the room as we talk about our nonlinear journeys and paths and how that affects you and maybe what skills you've learned through your nonlinear paths. And we'll start off with this Steve Jobs quote. I really like it. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And to me, this is a reminder that as we're working day by day and we're making these tough calls, we're making these decisions to come and join summits like Techqueria, and we're trying to expand our network. And we might be thinking, I know I think a lot, or especially like earlier on in my journey, my path doesn't seem to connect. I had a lot of thoughts of like, I seem to be all over the place. I can't make up my mind. But when you look back, you actually can start to connect the dots. And then you're like, wait, no, my job as a coffee barista actually taught me how to listen for people's like needs and wants. They were giving me their coffee orders, but really I learned to understand what they really needed in that moment. And that's just one idea of it will make sense in retrospect and not necessarily as you're taking each step at a time. With that, this is my slide of connecting my dots. And at first glance, I feel like it makes perfect sense. It's a lot of data, a lot of math. Just to introduce myself formally, my name is Kenia. I am a mathematician. In 2017, I graduated from UC Berkeley. I am the first in my family to get a college degree. I got my BA in applied math with a concentration in numerical analysis. During undergrad, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I did a whole lot of research. And that gave me a whole lot of different experiences in STEM and in applied math. And that kind of made me feel like I was all over the place, but it definitely gave me the correct skill sets to then apply them moving forward. In 2019, right before the pandemic hit, I enrolled into my master's program at Cal State Channel Islands because that was when I sort of realized, and this was kind of in the beginning of like the whole tech boom, I realized that I wanted to go back to school for a data science concentration, a data science more like formal experience. But getting to that point even was full of like these dots, and they're not necessarily on this page because I condensed my whole life to these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. But that's what we're here to talk about today is like, how do we get to these spaces and how do we make the dots make sense on the way there as well? In 2020, through the power of connections and authentic networking, one of my closest friends from undergrad connected me with a job as a data science intern at her company at the time, which was Chevron. And that was my first real introduction to data science and what that looks like in the energy sector. It was virtual. That was right in the middle of pandemic, but it gave me a lot of really good experiences. And in 2021, when I finished my degree at Cal State Channel Islands, that turned into a full-time offer. So I started a rotational program, which if people want to talk about rotational programs, that was my main draw to the opportunity at Chevron because it was an opportunity to learn what data science could look like in different departments. And it looks vastly different depending on if you're upstream, if you're downstream, like midstream, what are you working on, the types of projects that use data science, they vary vastly. So it was a really good introduction. I learned a whole lot. I spent, I believe, 5 years as a data scientist / data analyst at Chevron. And then earlier this year, I joined PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, as a senior business analyst. And again, these terms are kind of umbrella terms. And maybe this will resonate with you guys, but especially when you're in the job market, you think you know what you're looking for, but then you read the description of the job that's available and you kind of ask, is this exactly what I want? Am I applying to the right job? Because a lot of these are umbrella terms, and you won't know exactly what the type of projects you'll be working on um, until you get there, and or you ask like, what exact projects does this team work with? But that is a little bit about me. This is how I look back and make sense of my trajectory, but there's a whole lot in between that comes with, being first generation. That comes with being, from LA. I have DACA, all these different identities that make the journey into STEM and through STEM more layered. And that's what I hope we talk about together today. The first thing that I want to talk about is truly that these nonlinear experiences build a lot of STEM skills and build a diversity of skills. So on the left here, we have problem solving in the real world. How many people come from maybe a different background? Maybe you're coming from entrepreneurship and you have your own business, or operations or business roles. Maybe you have a customer facing role. Maybe you're a tutor, and you're like, how exactly will this translate into the job that I want? It does. It builds analytical thinking and systems thinking in this sense. You translate ambiguity into structure. And there's different kind of soft skills that come with every opportunity and every experience that we have. And it's about kind of reframing and emphasizing different skills. Earlier today, there was another session on using AI to like help us with our resumes and things like that. And I think a big takeaway from there as well is how we emphasize different parts of our experiences depending on the role that we're looking to get into, or the field that we're trying to get into. In the middle here, I really want to emphasize self-paced technical growth. In the day of AI, we really should be leveraging it, to help us with our resumes. We should be taking like these online courses. Even me, for example, I have like these degrees in math, and even then I still take these, AI and data is ever growing and ever changing. So it's important to be able to take these self-paced sort of boot camps, courses, certificate courses, things like that, to help us stay like on top of the new thing. Learning tools on the job, self-taught languages. A lot of people, one thing I wanted to say here actually is like, especially at these older companies, and let me know if you guys agree, but especially at these older companies, how old are computers? How old this tech boom is relatively recent, relatively. And so that goes to say like, a lot of our senior leaders have taught themselves how to code, have taken advantage of these self-paced technical opportunities. And so who's to say we can't do the same? Just because I don't have a degree in STEM, or because I'm coming in from a different field, doesn't mean that I can't also do the same. And so I'm someone who really kind of pushes for these self-paced technical growth. Also, I'll just throw it in there, but getting these degrees and getting it all costs a lot of money. So sometimes you got to do what you have to do and take these like smaller courses. They're still reputable, they're still rigorous. You're gonna learn what you need to learn, and you're gonna be able to move forward. So I wanted to emphasize that self-paced technical growth part there. And then the overall sort of interdisciplinary backgrounds idea that we develop adaptability. If it's one thing Latinos know, and anyone with like non-traditional paths, is you got to stay on your toes, and you have to develop the ability to be adaptable and persevere and consistent. But more than that, interdisciplinary backgrounds. If you're a tutor, you have this applied knowledge. You can take, and I've tutored, I was a TA for statistics and math. I learned how to take these difficult concepts and help them be more digestible depending on who I was, tutoring, at what level I was tutoring. There's a lot of skills that are very transferable, and they're not all necessarily soft or hard or technical skills. But on the next slide here, just a little bit more of like the transferability of our strengths from our nonlinear paths. If you have a background in public health, which I know some folks here come from different fields, here's an example that builds human-centered thinking. And that's not something everybody has. I think that's a strength. Background in entrepreneurship. I think I alluded to this a little bit earlier. Entrepreneurs, they are the definition of ownership and resourcefulness and literal execution. So those are all amazing skills to have in tech. Everyone, if you see the job titles and these like the way that they market themselves, is we want self starters. What is an entrepreneur if not a self starter? They have that, you know. So that's something that you can emphasize. That's something that you already have just from your experiences. A background in operations or project management, that definitely builds adaptability and leadership. So there's all these different ways that we develop our soft and hard skills depending on our backgrounds. If anybody would like to jump in the chat, or actually, I think the next slide, I'm going to ask for some input. Yes. So if people can just kind of scan this QR code, what is one technical or soft skill that your nonlinear background has helped you develop? And I believe that this QR code allows multiple responses. So if you've got more than one technical or soft skill that you're really proud of, please scan the QR code and drop it in the chat. I'll go ahead and share that screen so we can see it come in as people are putting them in. If anybody's just now walking in, we're talking about the different technical and soft skills that our nonlinear backgrounds have helped us develop. So you can just scan the QR code. You can add more than one. Resilience, empathy, adaptability is huge. Collaborative is a really good one. Yes, emotional intelligence. Wow. Would anyone like to unmute and sort of maybe the bigger ones or any of them? If you'd like to like just, I'd love to hear from the people that are um, chiming in. If you'd like to elaborate a little bit on that experience. Or just put it in the chat, that's okay too. Prioritization, emotional intelligence, team building, grit. I love that word. Active listening, empathy, collaboration, collaborative. I see a lot of collaborative. Okay. Thank you guys for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main slide. And double check the chat. Leo Sosa says collaborative. I saw that one was a really big one. Adaptability and mentorship in my case are coming from a family of teachers. That's beautiful. Mentorship is a huge one. And that's something that I do want to discuss as well, is the community building aspect of things. So that was a beautiful segue into more of our nonlinear advantages that are built through our regular lives, whether that's passion projects, side jobs, interests, schools, and our different backgrounds. Going right into resilience, real world STEM work is always changing. And so that adaptation that I saw people putting into the word cloud is literally essential. You have to be resilient. You have to be consistent. Everything changes. You know, we're on this sort of like big boom of growth, and you have to stay on top of it. So you have to, it's hard. It's easier said than done. But we have community as well. We gain mentorships. We gain sponsors, those people that will volunteer your name behind closed doors, those people that, like my friend Eileen, who said, hey, we have an internship available, and I know that my friend is in college right now. Let me just send her the link and see if she's interested. Friends and networks throughout our journey. I think this is a really big one that I'd like to emphasize, especially because as Latinos, if anybody else can relate, when we are first generation, we do not inherit that network that other people and other families do. We don't come from those families that, are already well connected in this country necessarily. I know I don't. And so for us, places like the Techqueria Summit and the chat right now, and everybody else that's in this room, please connect with each other on LinkedIn. Like, we become our own network and we become our help. I saw a comment in one of the earlier chats that said we were sold this myth about like needing to make it and be successful by ourselves in a very hyper individualistic country. But the reality is that we do need community. So I just wanted to take a moment and emphasize the community aspect. And I hope that that kind of resonates with the folks in this room. The cross-functional skills, we've kind of talked about that one a little bit. Please, I see Flavio dropped his LinkedIn in the chat. Everybody should do the same. And I'll get back to this. The cross-functional skills, we've sort of like tiptoed around a little bit. Ability to transfer knowledge across domains. For me, a lot of my background was in academic research. I did research in astronomy. That went really well, but as a data scientist, it doesn't necessarily connect. But it does, because I learned Python, so that's like a cross-functional advantage that kind of makes sense in retrospect, at least. But it also would be shocking to see how intertwined analytical skills are across many fields. They might not be exactly the same, but they are complementary, and these skills do overlap, especially in the tech space. So my job as a data scientist is one part of the puzzle, and maybe a data engineer is a different part of the puzzle, but there's a lot of overlap because I can't produce a product unless the data engineer kind of helps me with the back end side of how the data is flowing in, for example. They're intertwined. They're different, but they are intertwined. And lastly, like a lot of people said, adaptability. Being able to prove to yourself time and time again that you can rise up to the occasion and be adaptable builds confidence. And you're experimenting at the same time. A lot of us don't have that safety net, So being able to prove to yourself, hey, I thought that was like when I got laid off last year, or, that's kind of going on right now as well. Like the job market's really hard. And then you look back one day and you made it. And that builds confidence. That builds you're fortified in who you are, in your skills, things like that. Lean on community. Progress comes from testing, adjusting, and continuously improving. With that, I like this sort of slide because I feel like our lives may feel like puzzle pieces that don't have the image on them just yet. But when you look back, again, connecting those dots, you realize that that one puzzle piece was maybe sending that message on LinkedIn, or making that post. And actually that one connected really beautifully to when you reframed your limiting beliefs and overcame that imposter syndrome, which we could have a whole different session and discussion on imposter syndrome. The next puzzle piece might have been applying, even if your path seems untraditional, to that job offer, to that LinkedIn post, just shooting your shot. And I saw somebody else in the chat earlier say that they applied to 100 jobs yesterday and that they had already secured 4 interviews. Shooting your shot. And maybe, you look back and you're like, that was one of those interviews that I got. And it was because I was so inspired from Techqueria and because all of the great connections that I made. Another puzzle piece might just be like coming to Techqueria and joining the session and the people that we're connecting with. So it's about leveraging the skills, the community, the hard skills, the soft skills, and slowly kind of watching the path unfold in a very unique way. So I do want to leave a little bit of time for any questions and answers and to plug the worksheet at the end. But some takeaways from this session is nonlinear journeys are valid journeys. Skills will always come before the titles. In fact, the skills build the titles. Your background is 100% your advantage. And a reminder that community, like this community here, accelerates growth. So lean on your community and be part of somebody else's community as well, because they're equally equally valuable. So at this time, we have some Q&A, just a couple of minutes if people have questions. There's also a Q&A like spot in the chat. If anyone wants to either unmute or type them in the chat, there's a Q&A little portion there. And then while that goes on, I will go ahead and remind you that there is a practice worksheet in the chat. I created a little worksheet to kind of help people bring together maybe like their experience, what that experience was like. For me, for example, it might be, I did my graduate thesis in cancer bioresearch. It was data science application, but it was so applied that it almost made me feel like it was going to be a little bit unrelated to my field. So I would take that experience, write the type of like skills that I learned from it, and then practice translating them. That's what the worksheet is intended to do. And there's like more things at the bottom of the worksheet. There's some actionable things you can remind yourself as a go-to, like, what am I going to do this week to really implement these learnings? Am I going to post on LinkedIn? Am I going to, go one by one through the chat and add all of the LinkedIn people that are nice enough to kind of add their links here? There's some actionable things you can do. Please use the worksheet. Connect and mingle, add each other on LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn, acknowledgements. Just thank you so much, Techqueria, and thank you, Amber, for helping me with this presentation. Yes, if the QR code is not working, I'll just drop it in the chat as well. But I'm Kenia Pina on LinkedIn. Please find me. Thank you guys so much for coming. And let me double check one more time. I don't see questions in the chat or in the QA. So with that, yeah, that is it. Thank you, guys. Leo's question: how do you inspire other Latina young women to be like you? That's something that I am really passionate about, is like helping other Latinas that are interested in STEM and tech. I feel like it's about building that community and helping each other the same way that you would rely on your friends. So I think it would be that. It would be more like, how can I help you, and how can we help each other? How can we be part of each other's community? And sometimes that means looking over each other's resumes. Sometimes that means practicing interviews together. Sometimes that means I was inspired to go back to school by one of my friends. I think it goes back to that question of community. Thank you, everyone. The majority of my research experience is rooted in qualitative research. I've used descriptive statistics in some of my work and want to develop more quant skills. I'm considering learning R as I apply for jobs. Is there another program that you would recommend? Renee, are you asking for a program for learning R, like a specific training? If so, I think the skills for R and Python are very interrelated. So either one. I know R is used in some industries more than others. And if you recommend another, like Python, yes, I recommend Python. I did learn R in grad school, but I find that in industry, Python is more of a go-to. Some trainings right off the bat that are coming to my mind are in Udemy, Udemy. They have really good, and Udacity as well. Sometimes they have sales for like $12, $13, and you buy the whole training, and it has with materials, it has projects. Connect with me, I can tell you more. Let's see, what is your advice for someone that just transitions into tech and is at an early stage? This might be a little bit generic. I know we're at time, but Valeria, I would say be open to new experiences and be open to failing and failing fast. I think you're going to fail regardless, and that's actually supposed to be an inspirational thing. But it's okay. It's part of growth. You can't grow without those, those setbacks. And just be passionate. Go after the projects that really inspire you, even if they're not necessarily in that specific job that you think, because there's a lot of lateral movement that will help you in the long run as well. But yes, connect with me. That is all of our time. But thank you guys so much. Bye.